Where are the men? What happened?
If I had to explain what it's been like being a man so far, I would say it's like coming out of the womb, a baby, and then you become a boy. And when you become a boy, they start teaching you how to be a man. And the lesson on being a man is a lesson on how to not be human. They desensitize you. They tell you that men have to be strong all the time. Men don't cry. Expressing yourself makes you soft. Piece by piece, they turn you into this hollow shell of a person. And it works. You know, you become a machine. You can get things done, and your emotions will never stop you from moving forward. It's just goals and logic. And then, oddly enough, after that, everything that you have been taught was wrong or that you shouldn't do is what is expected of you moving forward. Now they want you to, your partners, they want you to express yourself and talk about how you feel and all of these things that you've never had a chance to do, so you don't know how. So then you try to fix those issues moving forward. And it is a very tiring cycle. And everybody thinks that you're just this cold person, but they never really address how you got.
Where are the
Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Welcome. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you have not already, go ahead and give the stream a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. So thank you so very much to everybody that is tuning in right now. Wherever you're from, please let me know. Also, by the way, just to let you guys know, if you are watching from a country outside the United States, let me know where you are. And if you're in the United States, let me know what state you're in. All right, I would like to know. Or if you're in any one of the territories as well. Just I'd like to know, where you guys are. How did you find me as well? Like, what channel were you guys watching when you finally discovered my channel? Things like that. I would like to know. I'm kind of curious about that. So I really appreciate that. But also, if you guys have not, you guys can go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. That alerts me to whenever that alerts you guys whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So you guys have that there as well. And if you guys are watching, on the Twitter side, then, if you guys would like to also answer this question as well, then please go ahead. Feel free. So nice to have you there as well. Now, this is a live stream. This isn't the premiere. So if you are commenting, I will read your comments because I want to say hello to you and see how you're doing and check on you. How the kids? How's the wife? How's the husband? How's the spouse? How's your mama? How's your daddy? I'd like to say hello to every single one of you before we actually get into the reading, but just want to say hello to people that are in the chat. You have CBC voter saying happy for it's 420. Oh my gosh. Oh my stars and stripes. Wow. Some of y'all probably lit right now while listening to this. Well, happy 420 to you as well. Good to see all of you here on this Saturday morning. That's probably why some people ain't live right now, because they probably getting the on right now. I didn't realize. Thank you so much for reminding me that. Sensational. Anywho, good to see all of you here. We have the cat's meow coming in saying, hey, JB. Hey, the cat's meow. Watching in as well. All the people that are watching on Rockfin, good to see you on Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, all y'all. Good to see you. Now, what are we talking about today? So as far as what I showed you guys is about this gentleman, Fredo, talked about what it's like growing up as a boy and turning into a man. One of the things that he spoke of that is very reflective of a lot of us is, how the process of how to take our emotions and sever it, right? Sever it from ourselves so that we can become more robotic. And as I've been doing the readings for this book, we have been talking about really the mechanization or the robotization of men so that we could be more useful to the capitalist system so that they can make more profit off of us, right? To take our humanity and separate it from ourselves. And so that's something that actually has been spoken about, that a lot of us men start to realize, especially once we hit our 30s and 40s, we're like, whoa. We start to kind of have that inner conversation with that little 7 or 8 year old that we had inside of us still, that little 7 or 8 year old in our hearts, right? And then we get to a point where we're like, in order for us to be able to be productive, we actually had to separate our hearts from ourselves. And so that's what we're going to be getting into deeper as well. We just finished chapter 3 of The Will to Change, but we're going to be continuing now in chapter 4. And so, yes, we are reading The Will to Change, Masculinity and Love by Bell Hooks. This is going to be a live reading and discussion. And chapter 4 is really it's a deep one. So we're going to be getting into that. I lost my spot. Hang on. And we're beginning of chapter 4 is beginning on page 55. Beginning of chapter 4 is called Stopping Male Violence. This is going to be intense, y'all. The reason why it's intense is because there are some men that are going to end up walking away from listening to this because to them it's not much of an issue, or to them is what they would consider a feminist issue. Nah, man. Dudes. No. Y'all got to stay for this one. You need to sit here and listen to this one. The reason why is because we got to have a talk, right? We got to have a talk. We got to hash some things out with each other. And by men, I mean cisgendered men, right? For the most part. Now, this is an excuse for women to walk away, because if you're a woman that's watching this, you need to stay here for this too, because this involves you too. Absolutely. Everybody needs to be in for this one, because if we're going to be talking about systems, we can't individualize things. We actually have to talk about it collectively together so that we can actually fix things together. And yes, some of you guys may think about, oh, well, this is just an identity issue. No, because this also translates into class. This translates into class dynamics and how we operate within the capitalist system as well. See, this is the thing about intersectionality that some people don't want to talk about, is that intersectionality also means that the class and identity also intersect in order to influence one another. This is why it's so important that we actually talk about these things as a whole system together. Because if we don't, then we're going to separate one from another, and we're not going to see how they actually work in tandem with each other, either for our benefit or our disadvantage. Right? All right, so we're going to be starting on page 55, Stopping Male Violence, chapter 4. This is going to be part 1. All right. Every day in America, men are violent. Their violence is deemed natural by the psychology of patriarchy, which insists that there is a biological connection between having a penis and the will to do violence. Now, some men are going to immediately walk away when they hear patriarchy. Oh my God, this is going to be about man hating. No. No. Don't do that. Because here's the thing. Don't get all up in your feels and get your tidy whities in a bunch the moment somebody mentions patriarchy. Don't get your tidy whities in a bunch. Don't be getting all up in there simply because somebody calls out patriarchy. They didn't say you, they said a system. Right? So this is the point where we actually have to use our logical brains and think, it's not an attack on you as a person. When people talk about patriarchy, it's not an attack on you as a man. It's not an attack on you as who you are. I think men really need to come to terms with that. Right? Like when I say white people, am I talking about all white people? No. When we talk about whiteness, are we talking about all white people? Do you individually as a white person? No. We're talking about systems, right? So don't get yourself caught up in your feelings when you hear about patriarchy and things like that, right? Got it? Okay. This thinking continues to shape notions of manhood in our society, despite the fact that it has been documented that many cultures exist in the world where men are not violent in everyday life, where rape and murder are rare occurrences. Every day in our nation, there are men who turn away from violence. These men do not write books about how they manage to navigate the terrain of patriarchal masculinity without succumbing to the lure of violence. As women have gained the right to be patriarchal men in drag, I'm going to read that again. As women have gained the right to be patriarchal men in drag, women are engaging in acts of violence similar to those of their male counterparts. This is why I said women need to stay for this too. Because some of y'all are also using that internalized patriarchy to perpetuate the same violence that some of us men do. Oh, we getting into it. We getting into this right now. I'm telling you, let me turn this fan off because this thing is getting on my nerves. This is deep. Okay. All right. So, by the way, Bell Hooks is a woman. She wrote this. This serves to remind us that the will to use violence is really not linked to biology, but to a set of expectations about the nature of power and art in a dominant culture. Over the decades, no matter how many television shows and movies we have watched in which the hero is the good man who uses violence to win the fight with bad men, many people have long felt that feminist thinkers exaggerate the degree to which men are violent in their daily lives. Radical feminist Andrea Dworkin has courageously and consistently dared to name the widespread scope of male violence against women. In Scapegoat, she writes, a recent United Nations report says that violence against women is the world's most pervasive form of human rights abuse. In the United States, the Justice Department says that 1 out of 12 women will be stalked at some point in her lifetime. The American Medical Association concluded that sexual assault and family violence are devastating the United States' physical and emotional well-being. In 1995, the AMA reported that more than 700,000 women in the United States are sexually assaulted each year, or 1 every 45 seconds. These facts address actual physical assault and do not cover the widespread emotional abuse that has practically become the accepted norm in male-female relationships, whether between husband and wife, father and daughter, brother and sister, or girlfriend and boyfriend. In How Can I Get Through to You, Terrence Real includes a chapter titled A Conspiracy of Silence, in which he emphasizes that we are not allowed in this culture to speak the truth about what relationships with men are really like. This silence represents our collective cultural conclusion with patriarchy. To be true to patriarchy, we are all taught that we must keep men's secrets. Real points out that the fundamental secret we share is that we will remain silent. Quote, when girls are inducted into womanhood, what is it exactly that they have to say that must be silenced? What is the truth that women carry that cannot be spoken? The answer is simple and chilling. Girls, women, and also young boys all share this in common. None may speak the truth about men. End quote. One of the truths that cannot be spoken is the daily violence enacted by men of all classes and all races in our society. The violence of emotional abuse. Guys, we got to talk. Just because you don't hit your woman doesn't mean you're still not abusing her. how many of us men sit by the wayside when we observe men emotionally abusing their women around them? Not just their wives, but their daughters, their sisters, their moms, their nieces, their grandmas. How many of us just don't say a word? Keep our mouth shut. Let them handle it. That's all them. Let's get into it. In her groundbreaking work, Emotional Abuse, Marty Tam Loring explains what emotional abuse is. Quote, an ongoing process in which one individual systematically diminishes and destroys the inner self of another. I'm going to read that again. Emotional abuse is the ongoing process in which one individual systematically diminishes and destroys the inner self of one another. The essential ideas, feelings, perception, and personality characteristics of the victim are constantly belittled. The most salient identifying characteristic of emotional abuse is its pattern aspect. It is the ongoing effort to demean and control that constitutes emotional abuse. Significantly, emotional abuse in families is not just a component of the couple bond. It can determine the way everyone in a family relates. If a woman is patriarchal, it can be present in a single parent home with no adult males present. In many homes, patriarchal power resides with teenage boys who are abusive to single parent moms. This is male violence against women. All right. Now we got that settled. When Real breaks the silence, the stories he shares are from family therapy sessions where clients openly reveal the way fathers have enacted rituals of power using shaming, withdrawal, threats, and, if all else, physical violence to maintain their position of dominance. In my family of origin, our dad, in a booming, angry voice, would often scream repeatedly at mom, I will you. I can't say the actual word because we're on YouTube. But it's the K word. For years, my nightmares were filled with my angry father, sometimes my mom, sometimes me, for trying to protect my mom. In our family, dad was not constantly enraged, but the intense emotional and physical abuse he unleashed on those rare occasions when he did act out violently kept everyone in check, living on the edge, living in fear. Usually a cold, silent, reserved man, dad found his voice when speaking in anger. The two men I have had as my primary relational bonds in my life are both quiet and reserved, like my dad and my beloved grandfather. Unlike my grandfather, whom I never witnessed expressing anger, much less rage, these two men I chose as partners both needed to exercise dominance now and then through rituals of power. One of them was physically violent on a few occasions, a fact he always felt did not matter, and emotionally unkind quite consistently. My second longtime partner I chose in part because he was a major advocate for stopping violence against women, but as our bond progressed, he began to be emotionally abusive now and then. It was as though he felt I was too powerful, and that perception empowered him to challenge that power, to wound and to hurt. I was stunned that the past was being enacted in the present. So, do some men feel threatened when the power dynamics seem to shift? When a woman actually expresses her power, do you feel threatened? Do you feel like you have to kind of take control of the situation? In self-help books galore, the notion that women choose men who will treat them badly again and again is presented as truth, right? How many times you got dudes that go, man, if you want to get her attention, you just got to neglect her, and then she'll come running to you? How many times have men said that? Hell, Even I thought that way for a while. And I'm gay. Even I thought that for a while. But that's just using abuse to get what you want. As a child, I thought childish things. But as I've grown older, I put away childish things. Right? These books rarely talk about patriarchy or male domination. They rarely acknowledge that relationships are not static, that people change through time, that they adjust to circumstances. Men who may have seeds of negativity and domination within them, along with positive traits, may find negative burgeoning at times of crisis in their lives. The two men I chose as partners, like all the men I have loved, were victims of various degrees of emotional neglect and abandonment in their childhoods. They did not love their fathers or truly know them intimately. Guys, do you really know your father? Like, really know him? Some of us have fathers in our lives where they're just a man that comes home in the afternoons or evenings, pays the bills. If we've been bad, he does the punishing. And then he's gone again. He's a physical presence, but is he an emotional presence? Even if he didn't physically hurt you. Growing from young adulthood into manhood, they simply passively accepted the lack of communication with their fathers. They both felt that all attempts at reconciliation should have come from the father to the son. And yet, as they matured into manhood, these men began to have not unlike the fathers whose actions they had condemned and hated. Observing them through time, I found that both of them have been rebellious and anti-patriarchal in their 20s and early 30s, but as they moved more into the work world, they began to assume more of the patriarchal manners that identify one as powerful and successful man. Though they had not been living with their fathers when it came time to be men, their early models of their lives were unconsciously reenacted. They could have protected themselves from this intimate repetition only by consciously working to be different, only by being disloyal to the dominator model. No man does not actively choose to work to change and challenge patriarchy escapes its impact. The most passive, kind, quiet man can become, the most passive, kind, and quiet man can come to violence if the seeds of patriarchal thinking have been embedded in his psyche. Much of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde behavior women describe in men who are alternately caring, then abusive, has its root in the fundamental allegiance to patriarchal thinking. Indoctrination into the mindset begun in childhood includes a psychological initiation that requires boys to accept their willingness to do violent acts makes them patriarchal men. A distinction can and must be made between the willingness to do violent acts and actually doing them. When researchers looking at date rape interviewed a range of college men and found that many of them saw nothing wrong with forcing a woman sexually, they were astounded. Their findings seemed to challenge the previously accepted notion that raping was aberrant male behavior. While it may be unlikely that any of the men in this study were or become rapists, it was evident that given what they conceived as the appropriate circumstance, they could see themselves as being sexually violent. Unconsciously, they engaged in patriarchal thinking, which condones rape even though they may never enact it. This is patriarchal truism that most people in our society want to deny. We got to be careful too, because coercion, when someone doesn't want to engage in intercourse, can also be seen as rape too. Are we begging and coercing till they give in? See where it's going? Whenever women thinkers, especially advocates of feminism, speak about the widespread problem of male violence, folks are eager to stand up and make the point that most men are not violent. Not all men. Why you got to pick on us? Not all of us. Why you have to point that out? Now, is it true that some can say, well, they blanket all of us as the same? Here's the issue. When we talk about policing in this country, a lot of times a lot of people will say, well, no, see, my and insert family member is a cop and he's a good guy or she's a good person. But then are we actually talking about the individual or are we talking about the system? Right? I'm going to pick on a celebrity and take it what you will, but I really don't give a damn. But Michelle talked constantly about how when Dr. Dre allegedly beat her, there were men present that saw the beating, that saw the abuse. What did they do? Did they stop him? Did they say, hey, man, that's not cool? Or did they stay silent? Did they say, it's not my business? It's not my problem? So when we talk about a system, can it also be a systemic thing when women talk about patriarchal violence as a systemic thing that we are conditioned to keep that wall of silence, right? Just like police keep that blue wall of silence, do we as men keep that wall of silence too? Do we keep that see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil? They refuse to acknowledge that masses of boys and men have been programmed from birth on to believe that at some point they must be violent, whether psychologically or physically, to prove that they are men. Terrence Real calls his early indoctrination into patriarchal thinking the normal traumatization of boys. Terrence Real says, when I first began looking at gender issues, I believed that violence was a byproduct of boyhood socialization. But after listening more closely to men and their families, I have come to believe that violence is boyhood socialization. The way we turn boys into men is through injury. We sever them from their mothers, research tells us, far too early. We put them away from their own expressiveness, from their feelings, from sensitivity to others. The very phrase, be a man, means suck it up and keep going. Disconnection is not fallout from traditional masculinity. Disconnection is masculinity. And that is something that I'm telling you right now, every single man in this chat, every single man that's watching right now can attest to this. And it always happens around this ages, I say between 7 and 9. It always happens around that age where that disconnection starts, because it's no longer acceptable for you to be emotional as a male. It is not acceptable at all. In fact, it is unmanly or feminine to express your full range of emotions. And so in order to be a man, you have to sever that. You have to separate yourself from it. You have to disconnect your heart. And I'm going to tell you right now, a bunch of men are probably, I'm not even looking at the chat right now, a bunch of men are probably saying, yep. It happened around 8, 9, 10 years old. And sometimes that is not only always perpetuated by the men in our lives. Sometimes it's perpetuated by the women in our lives. Sometimes it's perpetuated by the male friends we may have because we want acceptance. Popular culture. Let me share something with y'all while we're in this. And then we'll continue in the reading. Let's listen to this.
It's the fact that a lot of you are only worried about Diddy being gay and not him being a supervillain is why I'm not surprised that people like Diddy exist. This is what happens when you try to take hold and control your young child, your young male child's sexuality from the day they are born. This is what happens to a lot of boys in America because they got stupid ass people raising them. It's like you take away the boys' emotions, their emotional intelligence first. You take away their ability to understand their feelings, their emotions, their ability to show empathy. That's usually the first thing to go. But right after that, what do? Y'all start hoeing out your sons. Not even that y'all see them, it's the fact that y'all have little boys and overtly sexualize them. Whenever they give their attention to another girl or a woman, to be like, oh, he's got a crush or he's after some ass, it's like y'all start pimping them out from the time they can talk. This is what hypersexualizes young children because it shows that this validation, this female attention, that sex is something that's important to society and that people are going to praise them for it. But only if it's straight, because if it's gay, even if it shows any little hint of gayness, and this usually includes emotional intelligence, by the way, then we're scrapping it, especially in the Black community where we hyper masculinize our men. So in case anyone has trouble doing the math, what do you get when you get a damaged child who doesn't understand their own feelings, have internalized anger that can pop out at any second, don't understand empathy for their fellow human being, only look at women as sex objects because that's what their parent, even their fucking mothers, have done to them, all while internalizing the belief that if they come out as gay, they will die, like literally die. They have received threats from their own families that they will die. What do y'all think is going to happen? This is why I tell cis women all the time, if your man is homophobic, you do not need to be surprised that he does not respect women, because that is just a blatant red flag. If he, like, women can understand this, that men usually respect other men and only other men. Okay, so if something comes up to where he doesn't respect that man, especially a man's personal life decisions that he doesn't have to see, you really think he's about to respect you? You think your man who comes home every day whispering how he wants to jump someone just for existing is going to respect you? Okay, Pookie. And this is coming from experience, by the way, growing up in a hyper-religious household, as well as masculinity being forced down my throat. You try to blend into the role, you try to perform that role, and what do you get? You get a fucking emotionally stunted asshole. Do you know how much of my apology tour was me apologizing for being the traditional man, or trying to be? Like, thank God I didn't do anything that bad, but still, I made people uncomfortable. But this is what happens. It's also why I don't like religion. I didn't say faith, I said religion. If you can't tell the difference, then that's on you. They take feelings that are naturally human and demonize them. So whenever they have it, they feel guilty. So with the walking emotional turmoil that is man, they feel the feeling of shame and guilt, and that suddenly becomes anger because they don't like those feelings on top of them, because a man is supposed to be this. To some extent, unless they're like some Joker, American Psycho type shit, I feel like a lot of men deep down know the shit that they done wrong. It's just the fact that you don't understand the actual math and science behind it, but part of their human brain is grasping that they've done wrong, and that's why they're feeling the shame, and that's why they're so pissed off about it, because they don't understand why they're feeling it. That's why you have so many men who are like, oh, she's lying, or you're just trying to bring men down and blah 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 blah. Why you can't have an intellectual conversation with a lot of them about these things. Y'all are legit raising sociopaths by trying to turn them into good men and not good people. Because y'all talking about Diddy being gay, that's not the problem. The real problem is, just like a lot of y'all His masculinity, his sexuality is a fucking performance, one that they only keep themselves in mind for, not other people. How am I going to be perceived? How am I going to be looked at? Not the value of another person's livelihood. It's why some of you are still in your 20s talking about, I get more girls than you. Like, that's actually going to close an argument. And here's another secret. We can tell a lot of you are in the closet, like, not because you're homophobic, but how much energy you're putting into that homophobia. Some of you live, eat, and breathe homophobia to the point of where I'm like, you like dick, don't you, Squidward? And just from a personal note, I think it's kind of weird how a lot of you parents think it's your job to have hand in your kid's sexuality. Like, that's not a form of grooming in itself. But go off, I guess.
Brother ate and left no crumbs. He cooked. Shall we continue? All right. This indoctrination happens irresponsive of whether a boy is raised in a two-parent household or in a single female-headed household. The perpetuation of male violence through the teaching of a dominator model of relationships comes to boy children through both men and women. Patriarchy breeds maternal sadism in women who embrace its logic. Ladies, are you listening? A great many women stand by and bear witness to their sons' brutalization at the hands of fathers, boyfriends, brothers, and so on, because they feel by doing so, they show their allegiance to patriarchy. No wonder that male rage is often most directed at women in intimate relationships. Such relationships clearly trigger for many males the anger and rage they felt in childhood when their mothers did not protect them or ruthlessly severed emotional bonds in the name of patriarchy. Contrary to popular myths, single mothers are often the most brutal when it comes to coercing their sons to conform to patriarchal standards. I'm going to read that one again. Contrary to popular myths, single mothers are often the most brutal when it comes to coercing their sons to conform to patriarchal standards. When people go, oh my God, these boys are feminized because it's all because of the single moms. These single moms have been battling that notion by being more brutal to their sons than they would if they were in a two-parent household. It's not single moms that's the problem. It's patriarchy, baby. It's like, it's funny because y'all want them to grow up to be these, super masculine men as they grow up. But then as soon as they grow up, then you got problems with them not being well-rounded. And you got problems with them not being emotionally available. But it's like you stunted that from when they were little. So you can't expect them to be emotionally available and emotionally well-rounded by the time they're adults because you severed that nerve when they were boys. You severed it. And now you're mad because they're violent? And now you're mad because they're emotionally stunted? Do not get mad that the plant no longer grows well because you decided to damage it when it was still a seedling. And now that it's not growing right, you're mad because it's not growing right? You damaged the seedling. You damaged the growth in this little baby stage. So now by the time it grows all wacky, then now you get mad at it? Come on now. Let's be real. This is why it's important that we have to walk away from this, man. The single mom who insists that her boy child be a man is not anti-patriarchal. She is enforcing patriarchal will. Researching boyhood, Olga Silverstein observed, in single-parent families, it is common to see boys who have become their mother's little man. Often these boys are very bossy children who patronize their mothers. who in fact do uncanny imitations of a certain kind of husband, being alternatively possessive, protective, and seductive. Whether a single parent or two-parent households, boys are allowed to assume the role of mini patriarch, are often violent towards their mothers. They hit and kick when their wishes are not satisfied. Obviously, as small boys, they do not have the strength to overpower their mothers. But it is clear that they see the use of violence to get their needs met as acceptable. And while mothers of boys who hit them may feel that hitting is wrong, they may simultaneously feel that it is their job to meet the needs of any male, especially one who is coercive. Many teenage boys have violent contempt and rage for a patriarchal mom because they understand that in the world outside of the home, sexism renders her powerless. He is pissed that she has power over him at home. He does not see her autocratic rule in the home as a legitimate power. As a consequence, he may be enraged at his mom for using the tactics of psychological terrorism to whip him into shape, and yet respond with admiration towards the male peer or authority figure who deploys similar tactics. In patriarchal culture, boys learn early that the authority of the mother is limited, that her power comes solely from being a caretaker of patriarchy. When she colludes with adult male abuse of her son, she, or later a symbolic mother substitute, will be the target of his violence. Years ago, the television show The Incredible Hulk was the favorite of many boys. It featured a mild-mannered scientist who turned into an angry green monster whenever he felt intense emotions. A sociologist interviewing boys about their passion for the show asked them what they would do if they had the power of the Hulk. They replied that they would smash their mommies. In her groundbreaking work, The Mermaid and the Minotaur, feminist theorist Dorothy Dinnerstein highlighted the extent in which boys respond to the autocratic power of mothers with rage. Like many feminist researchers today, she insisted that male engagement with parenting was needed to break this projection onto mother as an all-powerful figure who must be rebelled against and in some cases destroyed. Clearly, patriarchal mothers who have rage at grown men act out with sons. They may either force the son to enter into an inappropriate relationship, which he must provide for her emotional connection grown men deny her, or engage in emotional abuse in which the son is constantly belittled and shamed. These acts of patriarchal violence serve to reinforce in the mind of boy children that their violence towards females is appropriate. It simply feels like justifiable vengeance. Feminist idealization of motherhood made it extremely difficult to call attention to maternal sadism, to the violence women enact with children, especially with boys. And yet we know that whether it is a consequence of power dynamics in dominator culture, or simply a reflection of rage, women are shockingly violent towards children. This fact should lead everyone to question any theory of gender differences that suggests that women are less violent than men. In patriarchal culture, women are as violent as men towards the groups that they have power over and can dominate freely. Usually that group is children or weaker females. I said everybody needs to be here for this. Now you see why. Like its male counterpart, much female violence towards children takes the form of emotional abuse, especially verbal abuse and shaming. Hence, it is difficult to document. Maternal sadism must be studied. However, if we are to understand the roots of adult male violence towards women, to some extent, the reformist feminist thinkers who have focused on women as the more ethical, kinder, gentler sex have stood in the way of an in-depth study of maternal sadism, of the ways women in patriarchal society act out violently with boys. In our household growing up, it was clear that our mother believed wholeheartedly that it was the role of the man to be the disciplinarian, to be in charge. When our dad used excessive violence, she merely saw it as his right. Lots of women who believe that it is the right of men to dominate feel that they should not resist male violence towards themselves or their children. Now, surprisingly, these women, my mother included, use all manner of violence to discipline children. Fearful of being the objects of grown man's rage, they may desire their children to be perfectly behaved so as not to arouse daddy's ire. In conversations with men whose mothers were passive as their sons were victimized, caregivers, that the men were far more likely than other men to idealize their moms, seeing them as victims. While they did not direct anger towards their mothers and were often unable even to protect their rights, these men were themselves violent in their intimate relationships with women. Their behavior affirms Terence Real's insight that, quote, the choreography of patriarchy, this unholy fusion of love, loss, and spares no one, end quote. Mothers who ally themselves with patriarchy cannot love their sons rightly, for there will always come a moment when patriarchy will ask them to sacrifice their sons. Usually this moment comes in adolescence. Remember what I said? When many caring and affectionate mothers stop giving their sons emotional nurturance for fear it will emasculate them. Stop hugging him so much. Stop, if he's crying, stop. They'll tell him. You're going to make him weak. You're asking a mom to stop caring for their child emotionally? Unable to cope with the loss of emotional connection, boys internalize the pain and mask it with indifference or rage. Usually, adult males who are unable to make emotional connections with the women they choose to be intimate with are frozen in time, unable to allow themselves to love for fear that the loved one will abandon them. If the first woman they passionately love, the mother, was not true to their bond of love, then how can they trust their partner will be true to love? Often, their adult relationships, these men act out again and again to test their partner's love. While the rejected adolescent boy imagines that he can no longer receive his mother's love because he is not worthy, as a grown man, he may act out in ways that are unworthy and yet demand the woman in his life that she offer him unconditional love. This testing does not heal the wound of the past, it merely reenacts it. For ultimately, the woman will become weary of being tested and end the relationship, thus reenacting the abandonment. This drama confirms for many men that they cannot put their trust in love. They decide that it is better to put their faith in being powerful and being dominant. And Man Enough, Frank Pittman says of men that, quote, while most of us want to be loved, controllers are willing to forego love if that is what it takes to be the boss, end quote. Being the boss does not require any man to be emotionally healthy, able to give and receive love. A lot of times, we as men will praise our moms because of the unconditional love that they give. How many times does anybody ever talk about unconditional love of fathers? And then, when is that unconditional love ever given to fathers? And a lot of times, we'll have that unconditional love, but we'll want that unconditional love outside because, well, we may have been separated from it. And we yearn for that same unconditional love that we got from year 0 to about year 8, 9, 10 years old. That's the love that we want. That's what we're trying to get back to. And we search for it. Some of us, gay men like me, will search for it in female friends. Straight men will search for it in female partners, in intimate relationships. Because their moms were told to sever or create conditions or just allow their boys to become men by the time they hit a certain age for fear of emasculating them. And here's a question. When you fear the emasculation of men, what does that really mean? Because if humanity is a spectrum, and if masculine is here and feminine is here, if you're emasculating men, if you're being emasculated, then what are you moving towards? Are you moving towards femininity? So that means that feminine is wrong in your eyes. But then you go, no, feminine is not wrong. Then why is emasculating, why is that moving towards femininity, why is it wrong in the first place? Why? Oh, because somebody has testes and a penis, then that means that they can't express the full range of humanity. Because if you take masculine and feminine and put them together, that's humanity. And don't we all possess that on the inside? So I honestly don't believe in emasculating. I don't believe that that actually exists. Now, I can see disrespecting, but you can do that to women and men, right? You can do that to male and female. You can disrespect, right? But emasculating? I'm not saying that being a man is wrong, and I'm not saying that being a man is right. I'm saying the difference between men and women are different. Apples are good and oranges are good, but they're not the same, right? In that meaning, what I'm saying is one's not better than the other. It's just different. They are part of that spectrum. And we blend in between it because of our humanity. And just like I said it before, and I'll say it again, men can be nurturers and women can be protectors. How many times people talk about mama bear? Why do we talk about mama bear, right? Why do we say that? Because when a woman goes into protective mode, oh, you better watch out, right? Why don't we talk about father bear or papa bear? You see, we can see it as women being providers and protectors, and men can be nurturers too. but we walk away from it because the system deems us as, oh, we have to separate ourselves. Because I have these particular body parts down here, I have to only subscribe to this part of my humanity, and the rest of part of my humanity, I have to sever that. No, absolutely not. Express the full range of humanity. Don't allow these people to tell you to sever different parts of yourself. So what? So they can tell, so you can tell you to act more violent, and then they give you an application to join the military industrial complex, so you're easier to control as a robot. Control different people abroad for resources, so they can maintain control of you. You can control a robot, but it's much harder to control a fully functioning, emotionally aware human being. Absolutely not. It is up to us to reclaim our full humanity, not because of this system where they tell you to sever parts of yourself just so that you can serve these dictators, these people who wear $5,000 Italian suits that sit in boardrooms. They're the enemies that telling you to sever who you are. And then they'll waltz out people like Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, Fresh and Fit. They'll waltz these people out and tell you, oh, you got to sever this part of yourself because you got to be a man. The hell? When they tell you to be a man, they're actually telling you to be less human. Real men express the full range of emotions. Real men express the parts of them that is considered feminine. Because guess what? We're human beings. We have hearts, we have emotions, we have fears, we have loves, we have likes, we have dislikes. We get scared. It's okay. And we have to give not only ourselves permission, but give each other permission to be truly human. It's okay. This system doesn't want us to be truly human. I'll say this last. Said it before, I'll say it here. Being more emotionally well-rounded and expressing the full range of emotions that we should as men is an act of rebellion against the system that tells you to be a robot. So, fellow rebels, be fully human. So, next time we read, we'll be going into page 65. At the end of 65, we'll continue in that. So I cannot wait to get into that. We're going to be stopping right there. But this chapter is just, whoo, it gets intense. I read the full chapter, man, and you're going to want to stick around for the next time. But while that being said, did you guys like the stream? Go ahead and give the stream a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. Thank you so much for joining in and listening to this as well. And then I'll get to the comments in the chat in a second. But for right now, I also want to thank the patrons on Patreon as well as Coffee and anybody that sends me anything via PayPal. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It means the world to me. And if you guys have not, if you want to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you so very much for that. It means the world to me. And in addition to, and furthermore, let's share this tiers on Patreon if you would like to support the channel. So we have JB members, Solidarity, Comrade, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. All right, let's go to the chat. Let's see what y'all had to say. Okay. Okie dokie, Smokey. So, we have John coming in saying, happy Saturday, everyone. Much love, JB. Much love to you, John. Good to have you. Good to see ya. We have H saying, what's up, peoples? What's up, H? Good to see you. Yay, yay. Chambers says, happy Saturday, JB, and all the family. Good to see you. Yay, yay. Yay, yay. Let me stop. Rando Online coming in and saying, yep. Layers of snark. Good to see you. Wesley O'Neill says, good afternoon from Atlanta, Georgia. Good afternoon to you. All right. Emperor Penguin says, I flippin' love JB. Well, I flippin' love you too. All right. Let's continue in. We got Norman Keena coming in. He says, please, this is 2024. Good to see you, Norman. All right. Who else we have? We have Exurfin to the max says, ouch. Ouch for what? What are we talking about? Sean, the Accord Lord Miller says, because he knows you like it, Norman. Good to see you. Apris Coop says, Adolph Reed has called out Barack Obama as a vacuous opportunist, and the scholars Bell Hooks and Michael Eric Dyson as little more than hustlers, blending bombast cliches, psychobabble. What? And lame guilt tripping in service to the pay me principle. I have no idea. Interesting. Well, all right. Thank you very much. Cobra Commander says, I grew up on a farm and got hit with a switch only once by my grandmother, and I absolutely deserved it. Cobra Commander, I rarely disagree with you, but I wouldn't. I put it to you this way. I wouldn't do it now. The man that I am, nah, I wouldn't do it now. Sean says, that's one thing my father got right. No matter what I did, he always had my back. Oh, wow. Interesting. All right. Well, Commander says, interesting. Does this mean the opposite is true as well? What does it say about someone who gives unconditional love, even if it's not beneficial to you or worse, potentially harmful? Interesting question. I think a lot of times love actually does have conditions. Love does have conditions because if you're somebody that's willing to hurt somebody else, that's not love. And Bell Hooks actually talks about this further along as she discusses more about male violence. But yeah. Let me see. Cobra Commander says, how I love. When I love someone, I love you. All of you, forever. Even if we break up, fight, or whatever, I still got you. Even if folks treat me bad, love them. What does it say about me? Here's the thing. In the grand scheme of things, you don't want to love them enough to the point where even if they're no longer in your life, you still want them to be okay. Now, if they've done something heinous to you, well, then that's for you to decide. But in more normal circumstances, like if there's somebody who I just don't want in my life anymore, I don't want them in my life anymore, but I want them to be okay. Right? Even if they're a toxic person, it's like, yeah, but I still want you to have housing, healthcare, food, education. I want you to be okay. You know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense? It's like, yeah, no, you can, F all the way off over there. But I don't want you to suffer. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But yeah. Let's continue on. Cicely says, as I'm drinking from my Mama Bear mug, my son got for me. Tell it, JB. Yeah, nice. Got a Mama Bear mug. Thank you so very much. Deborah says, this was great, JB. Thought-provoking. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. Oh, Sean says, Norman, I always wanted to be a voice actor, then got throat cancer. Oh, man, I'm sorry. Cynical girl says, don't know if you see this, but happy 420, JB. Happy 420 to you if you're watching on the Twitter side. All right. So let me check on the Rock as well. Oh, we got some comments on the Rockman. Oh my. Comments on the Rockman. I can't even make my voice that high anymore. I used to be able to. I sounded like a choir boy back in the day. Now I don't. Now I sound like this. Oh, God. Okay. I sound like that dude from Family Guy. What's his name? John, I think it is. Oh, yeah, Peter. Anyway, Anna Mayer says, much love, JB. I really appreciate your perspective. You really can't love anyone until you love yourself. Sounds so cliche, but it's true. And thank you very much for the tip on Rockman for showing some love. Appreciate it. All right. All right. So I will be live at 6 p.m. this evening. I know you guys are going to see me twice today. Who'd have thunk it? But I'm going to be talking about, I'll be doing a reaction to JT Chapman's video that he put out yesterday on Second Thought. And I would like to talk about it. And it's more of in line of what to do, to really push for solutions in our communities, because a lot of times we talk about the issues all the time. We talk about the problems. And the thing is, like, well, what do we do as a solution? I think that's really important. And I think that we should talk about the solutions and encourage people of what we can do, not just listen to the issues, but also talk about what we can do on the ground so that we can push for a better system, push for a better world. I think that's important. So I'll be talking about that later this evening at 6 p.m. So I hope that, I'll be able to, get into that with you guys too. So I appreciate that. So for those of you who are watching, the bulk of you guys are watching on Twitter. It's so good to see all of you here watching me on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. So I'll be live a little bit later. Can't wait to watch that. If you guys want to watch me later, I'm not going to be streaming to Twitter, so you guys will watch me on YouTube. So I'll be there. So, but I just want to thank you guys all for tuning in. And look, just to be, clear, I will be continuing the book Laziness Does Not Exist. We'll be getting into the final thoughts. So Laziness Does Not Exist. I'll be continuing that reading. And then I will also continue in the reading of Water and the Spirit. So we'll be continuing that. And also I will be live tomorrow on RBN for the JB show. So tune in for that. We'll be talking about some news stories as well. So thank you very much for all of that. As I always continue to say, water your plants, water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Now, it's 420. Some of y'all know what to do. And if you don't do it, then drink them if you got them. And if you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary. Or read because reading is fundamental. And also, men, let's start being our full selves. Let's give permission to each other to be the full range of who we really are. Express our love in constructive ways. Look, we can build. And by building, we can build each other up. Right? Like we say in my community, gas each other up, man. If you see a dude wearing something that he looks fly in, let the brother know. Let him know. Like, hey, bro, you wearing that, bro. Right? If your homie says something that was relevant, that really made sense, let your homie know that, hey, man, I appreciate your intellect. I appreciate the way you break things down. Right? Dap them up, man. Let them know that, and if your homie starts to get a tear in his eyes, give him permission to let it out. And ladies, if your man starts to express his full range of emotions, nurture that. Nurture it. Because you don't want a man to substitute his sadness with rage. You don't want a man to substitute his fear for anger. You want him to express the full range. That's important too. And we got to rebel against this system. And by doing so, we'll change the future to be more whole than what we are. All right, everybody. Love you. Mwah. Forehead kisses to each and every single one of you. Why? Because that's just the kind of man I am. Give all y'all forehead kisses. And there's nothing you can do about it. Love you. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.